Hi everyone, and welcome back to another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours. I'm back at Norris Geyser Basin. I've just come down from the parking lot, which is up over there. Please remember that once you leave the parking lot, you're not going to find a restroom down here. There are two geyser basins at Norris, Back Basin and Porcelain Basin. We already have a virtual Yellowstone tour on Back Basin, which is down that way over there. You take the trail coming up on our left, and when we go right through the Norris Museum, we'll get to Porcelain Basin, and that is the trail to Back Basin. Porcelain Basin is one of my favorite thermal areas in all of Yellowstone. It just looks so stunningly beautiful, especially early in the morning and late in the evening. I do caution you though, you are at altitude and you will be going down quite a bit, which means that you have to climb back up again. Let's take a look at where Norris Geyser Basin is. If you go to the following of our sites, yellowstonetours.net/map, that's yellowstonetours.net/map, and I will drop in a copy of the map over here. And I'll get back to the map in a minute. This is why I feel that Norris is such a stunning geyser basin. Just look at that steam coming up everywhere that you look. And if you listen carefully, you can hear Black Growler, which is a fumarole down over there. We'll get a lot closer to it. That's the little trail we've come down so far. And now we make our way down into Porcelain Basin itself. And it's reasonably early in the morning, so it hasn't warmed up yet, and this is why you see so many thermal features all over the place, just steam everywhere you look. See those beautiful pools over there as well. This is Black Growler coming up on our left. There's 4 thermal features that you're going to find in an area such as Yellowstone: geysers, hot springs, mud pots, and fumaroles. And on this hill over here, we can hear the fumaroles. We can hear the roar from them. Pretty cool how the steam is coming into the camera, isn't it? A fumarole occurs in an area where there's still a source of intense heat, but not that much water. You'll notice how in these areas over here, the fumaroles are located on the hillside a little bit higher than the area down at the bottom. This means that for the most part they're above the water table. There's not that much water left, and what they are really doing is creating steam and the noise that comes from the steam as it boils away. It stands to reason, I think, that fumaroles are the hottest of the thermal features, and they get up to well over boiling point. Boiling point where we are at about 7,000 feet, well, we're actually higher than 7,000 feet, but boiling point at 7,000 feet I think is about 93 degrees, and these thermal features are certainly higher than 93, and they get up to about 113, maybe 115 degrees. I was telling you where Norris Geyser Basin is relative to the rest of Yellowstone. If you have a look at that map I mentioned at yellowstonetours.net/map, can you see that water in the air? It's spraying all over me. You'll notice that the roads through Yellowstone make up a massive figure of 8. And there's a road that runs through the middle that separates the gigantic figure of 8 into 2 separate loops. And that road runs from Norris Geyser Basin, which is where we are at the moment, towards Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. Can you see the steam coming off that fumarole? Fumaroles are also called steam vents, and you can see why over there. Anyway, I was saying that there is a road that runs from Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone to Norris, which divides Yellowstone into the two gigantic loops. And Norris Geyser Basin then is located approximately halfway down the figure of 8, where it splits up into the two loops on the left side or the west side of the map. Norris Geyser Basin is named after the second superintendent of Yellowstone National Park, a guy by the name of Philetus T. Norris. He had a habit of naming a whole bunch of things in the park after him, but this is really the only one that has stuck. You can see there's a trail that runs around. We're doing it in a counterclockwise direction, and this is a little side trail that branches off. I was saying that Norris had this habit of naming thermal features or naming places in the park generally after him, and this is the only one that remains. Virginia Cascade, which is just up the road from us on the way to Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, was also originally named after Norris by Norris, and I'm going to stop filming for a moment to take a picture of this. Even by Yellowstone standards, where there are so many unique things happening all the time, Norris Geyser Basin is unique. There are transformative events that take place here in Norris every year in the summer and the early fall, and scientists aren't quite sure why it happens here. They do happen in other parts of Yellowstone as well, but not to anywhere near the same extent as is the case here in Norris. What happens is that you may find a geyser that hasn't functioned for years, or a hot spring that has been dormant, and it suddenly starts bubbling violently, and the geyser starts erupting just out of the blue. And I'm sorry if my voice is muffled, because I'm putting on my mask with all these people around here who are not wearing masks. Anyway, I was talking about the transformative events. Gosh, isn't this stunning with all the steam coming off? I'm going to stop here and take another picture, and I'll get back to you. Everywhere you look, you can see the steam coming off the thermal features. You can hear water splashing around, you can hear fumaroles hissing and roaring. And I'm going to continue up this way, and I'll get back to my story about the transformative events here once we've enjoyed the views. I always feel the best time to come to the geyser basins is early in the morning or later in the evenings, before sunset of course. When it's cooler, you see the steam coming off the thermal features to a much greater extent than you do at other times during the day.
That's only for the guys that are camping.
There's a lot happening here, isn't there? This area is called Porcelain Springs. The only downside of all this steam, it's difficult to see the thermal features. There was a little geyser going off over there, and there's an amazingly blue pool behind that steam. And there's a fumarole going off like crazy somewhere over there. Oh, there's a geyser going off. And as I get there, it stops. And I'm going to continue back to the main trail, which we can see over there. I was talking about these transformative events that happen at Norris Geyser Basin to a greater extent, far, far greater extent than anywhere else in the park. And I was telling you how there could be a hot spring which has been muddy, and all of a sudden it starts violently erupting and turns into a geyser, or geysers that have been dormant for years, and they all of a sudden start erupting out of the blue. And this tends to happen a lot more here than it does elsewhere in the park. Scientists, as I mentioned before, aren't really sure why it happens, but why it happens here to a greater extent, and why it happens here in the in the summer and the early fall. But there are a number of factors at play here. Firstly, you've got high pressure water coming up from underground. And when I say high pressure, really high pressure, it comes up and the pressure is so high that the water actually breaks through the ground and creates new holes in the Earth's surface through which the plumbing can come up, the water can come up, and new thermal features are created. Not dissimilarly, you also have water here underground that has got a mineral content such that it actually eats into the rocks. It eats into the ground. And in so doing, it also creates pipes, if you like, that come up from underground and create new thermal features here. And I'm just taking off my mask again. On the flip side of that, I've mentioned to you before that these thermal features in a lot of the park bring up sinter from underground. And sinter can grow really quickly, especially in this part of Yellowstone. And the sinter adheres to the sides of the plumbing, to the sides of those pipes, if you like, that are coming up from underground. And they cause them to become clogged. And once they become clogged, the source of heat and the source of water is no longer able to get up from underground, and the geyser stops working. Then we have earthquakes, which are so important in a thermal area like Yellowstone. And they can work in two ways. Number one, when an earthquake occurs, it can vibrate or cause the plumbing, the pipes, to start moving, and in so doing, it causes the sinter that is on the sides of the plumbing to come off, and a geyser that was once plugged up is now able to work again. The flip side to that, though, is that when an earthquake happens, it can also knock the plumbing out of shape, and a conduit that was carrying water and or heat up to the surface is now knocked out of place. It's no longer able to get the thermal water up to the surface, and because of that, the geyser or the hot spring actually stops working. if we have a look back over here, we can see those fumaroles that I'd mentioned to you that we saw as we came down. You really do need to stay on the boardwalks in these thermal areas. At Back Basin, which is over there, near Pork Chop Geyser. I think it was 2 years ago, 2018. A guy and his sister were walking around the boardwalk system, and for reasons that aren't really capable of explanation, they decided to get off, or he decided to get off the boardwalk system. And these areas around here can be really thin. And have a look at that board. I'll explain to you what it's saying in a minute. They plunged through. And, he plunged through. When rangers came to try and find his body, it had disappeared. It had been eaten up by the acid. If we have a look at these here, these are called bacteria mats. And the very hottest part of a geyser or a thermal feature is generally going to be in the middle. And then as the waters flow away from the source of heat, the waters obviously cool down. As I mentioned when I was talking about fumaroles, the water that is produced by these thermal features is incredibly hot, and there's very few organisms that are able to live there. You do have something called thermophiles, which are heat-loving bacteria, which can survive there. But as the water cools down, so more and more organisms are able to live. And I think we probably get a better idea of the color back over here. Can you see how this is green? The green in this part of Yellowstone is being caused by algae. And where you see the very dark green, and I don't see any great examples of it immediately, that's from an alga called zygogonium, which is found in this part of Yellowstone. Where we see the red or the browns, that shows that there's iron in the bacteria or the in the thermophiles. Here's some more green with a little bit of yellow thrown in, and the yellow is caused by sulfur. If you do come to Yellowstone, like there's some yellow over there, if you do come to Yellowstone and you come to these thermal areas, you'll be able to smell the sulfur. It's like a rotten egg smell. That's where we were when we took that side trail. When we run our tours to Norris Geyser Basin, this is where we generally stop once we go over this little bridge where the bacteria mats are. Because if you continue in this direction around that loop and then back up, there's not really an awful lot to see. So I would suggest that you turn back over there. But seeing as it's such a beautiful morning, I'm going to carry on walking around this big loop. On the other side of that trail over there is where Back Basin is. Back Basin is significantly longer. The trail is significantly longer than the trail through Porcelain Basin. It's about 2.6 miles long, so about 4.2 kilometers long. So you'll spend a lot more time on it. There's also a lot more thermal features there. So there's a lot more to see when you do wander around the Back Basin. The best known feature at Back Basin is Steamboat Geyser. Steamboat is the world's highest currently active geyser. I say currently active because there is a geyser in New Zealand that has been recorded at heights higher than Steamboat. Steamboat's eruption patterns are very interesting. Up until I think it was 2018, Steamboat used to erupt approximately every 3 days to 70 years. But in 2018, Steamboat started erupting a lot more frequently. And now it's not unusual for it to go off every couple of weeks. You can see over there just how thin the ground is. I'd mentioned that Norris is the most thermally active part of Yellowstone, and also the thermal features here are the hottest at Norris. And if you look at that map that I mentioned to you before, and if you take a look at the lower loop of the park, you'll see there's a soft purple line that follows more or less the lower loop, and time to put the mast on again. And what that purple line shows us is where the caldera was. That was the gigantic hole in the ground that was created when the Yellowstone supervolcano last erupted approximately 620,000 years ago. And I know I vary on that, but so do the authorities. You see, 600,000 years ago. In fact, I think there's a sign up at the museum up at the top there saying that it was 600,000 years ago. But other reference books say 625,000 years ago and 640,000 years ago. But anyway, it was a long time ago. And when the Yellowstone supervolcano erupted, boy, those are pretty colors, aren't they? I'm just going to stop and take another picture. The caldera then is the gigantic hole in the ground that was left when the Yellowstone supervolcano last erupted. And you decide how long ago that was. And that is what that soft purple line is showing. If you look at where Norris is, you can see that it is just outside that soft purple line. But obviously Norris is still getting a source of heat and a source of water to be the most thermally active part of Yellowstone. I hope you can see now why I suggest that you stop your exploration of Porcelain Basin at Norris Geyser Basin just after those bacteria mats, because that's certainly where most of the points of interest are. Although nothing in Yellowstone is going to be boring. And now we climb up these steps back towards the main trail down into Norris. And the trail that comes out of Back Basin, or if you prefer, goes into Back Basin, is right over there. And it continues in that direction. You can see we're coming out close to where I told you Black Growler fumarole was over there. Thanks for joining me on another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours, this time to Porcelain Basin at Norris Geyser Basin. If you enjoy our virtual Yellowstone tour series, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Otherwise, see you in Yellowstone.